Hello everybody, it's me, GhostCritic. It's time for a Sunday comic book review video. Thank you for joining me here, and with 4 books this week, which is double what we had last week, fortunately. All the titles were full of shocks, surprises and twists and turns, which made this week very fun and entertaining to read. But before I get on to those books, just a reminder, I obviously am going to be talking storylines, plot lines, cliffhangers and all those shocking twists and turns of the book. So if you've not read any of these titles, when I pick one up and you've not read it yet, go away and read it, or just skip until you don't see that title anymore. I would not want to spoil any books for you. Right, so let's pick the very first book I'm going to talk about this week. And although the one that I talk about first is usually the one I least enjoyed, with 4 books, this wasn't a bad comic in any way, really. But it was just, from the 4 that I had, it was at the bottom, so to speak. We are talking about Dan Slott and the Allred's Silver Surfer. This is issue number 11. And it's been a bit of a kind of silly ride that we've had, especially on this volume, with Dawn and the Silver Surfer, Norrin Radd, running around these crazy planets, almost kind of Ricky and Morty esque, in that they're just the most ridiculous planets ever, with just really kind of stupid, silly ideas, although they're kind of like imaginative, but they're just a little bit daft and silly. And this is no exception, as Dawn and the Silver Surfer are hopping from planet to planet, looking at all these crazy places, alighting on a planet where I guess alien bears and alien bees are at war with each other. And the Silver Surfer and Dawn take the side of the bees to save all their honey that the bears are after. Yes, that's the kind of silly nonsense we're getting in Silver Surfer at the moment. But the kind of undercurrent and turning into kind of like the major storyline in here is the fact that Dawn's sister is about to give birth. And Dawn's always said she wants to be there at the birth, so there is this kind of race for time to get back to Earth to be there as her sister is giving birth. But there are obstacles in the way. The one obstacle, as we can see from the cover, is this guy here, which is it Warrior Zero? Have to remember, yes, Warrior Zero. I've got a feeling this is part of a storyline that I may have missed from a volume of Silver Surfer, but there's this kind of Warrior Zero, Warrior 1, and I guess 2, 3 and 4. And if you're Warrior Zero, you've basically been shamed, you've fallen in battle, or you've done something really bad. And this has happened to this gentleman because of Silver Surfer, so he's wanting revenge and is aiming to stop Silver Surfer from getting Dawn back to Earth. And there are, you know, the usual very big psychedelic type of battle scenes with lots of little kind of acid type swirls, acid trip swirls, and I mean it's really good the way the Allreds have kind of laid out these pages to make the fights look more interesting and different to your just run-of-the-mill average slugfests. What we do get at the very end, after kind of 2 or 3 miss hits, I guess you'd call them, Dawn and Silver Surfer finally get to Earth, but it's too late. Her sister has already had the baby, but there is more shocking news for Dawn, as it looks as though her father has died. We don't know how, and it may be a little twist. It might not be death, but they're all dressed in black. They all look very somber, and obviously the last page of this is kind of like, where's Dad? And it's inset in this big black border. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. As I said on Wednesday, I've got a feeling this book will probably be ending soon. The run on this, it's one of those books that, while good, is a kind of very niche market. It's not a kind of mainstream, high level, high visibility character within Marvel's canon of superheroes. So I think people miss out on what has been an interesting story, though a little bit silly and daft at times. But sometimes you need silly and daft. What can you say? Moving on to DC, issue 22 of Greg Rucka's Wonder Woman. And as I mentioned again on Wednesday's video, we've got a new artist on here in Andolfo, and I was actually initially quite happy to see that you could see a difference in time, because you have the two separate storylines that are running kind of 1 week after the other. And it's nice to see a kind of difference in age. Andolfo has certainly made the characters in this that is set in the past, kind of like the earlier years of Wonder Woman, and made them all look a lot younger than the ones in the present day. Something that the artists previously, as good as they have been, haven't really done. However, after reading this issue, they don't get it quite right. What we have at the beginning of this is this kind of auction for kind of big celebrities, and you kind of bid on them, and you get to spend a day with them doing whatever you want. Obviously within reason, I would have thought. And in this kind of auction sale is a day or a date with Wonder Woman. And so there's a kind of amusing piece in here with Lex Luthor and Bruce Wayne both trying to outbid each other for a date with Wonder Woman, and the price of Wonder Woman goes into the millions. And just as it looks like Bruce Wayne is about to win, then our resident doctor, what was her name? Is it I know it's Veronica, head of the kind of the enterprise business that is looking for Themyscira. She stands up, doubles the blast bid, and wins this date with or this day with Wonder Woman. So of course you're all automatically thinking something's going to be a little bit sketchy here, and it's not just that sketchiness. You know, there's obviously something, a hidden agenda by Veronica, but the way it's been drawn, everyone looks incredibly young, to the point where Wonder Woman looks almost teenage-like in this book, and then you kind of feel a bit icky about two grown men of Bruce Wayne and Luthor both bidding on her. It kind of almost crosses that line of creepy and cringiness, unfortunately. But the story is basically a way for Veronica to drag her into this not trap, but a way to kind of measure her power set, I guess, but also the kind of energy it gives off, because obviously Wonder Woman is from Themyscira, and this Enterprise Industries wants to find out where Themyscira is, so they think the energy she's putting off is going to be the energy that's somewhere where Themyscira is. And that's the whole point of it all. And Wonder Woman's not so stupid by the end of this that she knows that Veronica's not all she seems to be. There are these moments of, how shall I put it? a love, almost not a love interest as much as such, but you know, if you've read Wonder Woman, there has always been this kind of sapphic lesbian undertones, even going back to, you know, the very early kind of golden and silver age of Wonder Woman. There has always been that underlying tone. It's obviously more, back then it was kind of subtle, but if you were old enough you'd realise, you know, you kind of read between the lines. Now it's obviously with the more mature readers and the state of the world at the moment, you kind of get this straight away. It's not so subtle as it's trying to be, if that makes sense. So it makes for an interesting mature read, rather in juxtaposition to the visualness of this, which looks very kind of not infantile. They don't quite go that far, but again, there's a youthfulness to this book that doesn't just quite sit right for the tone of the book that Rucker is writing. And thank you to the likes of Larassa and Sleepy Reader Damien, who told me about the next person who's going to be writing this book, and it seems to be a woman called, I think it was Shia Fontana, who is doing the DC Supergirls, is it? And it's very cutesy. It's very youthful. It's marketed at young teenage girls, clearly. But to transfer that into this book, I don't know if it will sit right for the strong and powerful, determined woman that we've seen in Greg Rucka's run. So I'm a bit worried about this book once he leaves. The last two books coming out will see the final part of each of these storylines, the one set in the past and the one set in the present day. But it's still a great, interesting read, and I hope to be continuing with Wonder Woman for many months to come. Penultimate book this week from Colin Bunn and art by Georges Molina and Ray Anthony Height. It is issue 3 of X-Men Blue, and I'm still loving this book. The last issue's cliffhanger was the introduction of the Sentinels, who originally, if you don't know who the Sentinels were, these were built by the humans, by the government at the time, to hunt down and kill mutants. You know, that whole scary premise of Homo Superior taking over the humans, and the way that they were trying to dwindle down their numbers. So this came as kind of a shock to our X-Men team, where they have the Sentinels who, while are fighting them, they're doing it in a kind of more defensive way than an aggressive way, because they just want them to listen to what they're saying. And you get the idea, yes, that the Sentinels have had a change of heart, so to speak, given that they're robots. They have been reprogrammed to protect the mutants now, and we find who is behind all this, and it is a character that I think was around at probably the end of the 90s, mid 90s, late 90s, and that's Bastion, who was the guy at the head of the Sentinels to begin with, and was, you know, killing mutants left, right and centre as much as he could. But again, he seems to have turned over a new leaf, and again wants to protect the mutants, but there is a twist, obviously, and it's Hank McCoy that works it out that their numbers, since all the events that have been going on, whether it is Wanda saying the no more mutants, whether it's these Terrigen mists that have held back mutant progression, there aren't many of them around anymore, and that means there aren't that many for the Sentinels to kill. And once they do achieve that, where they kill all the mutants, they end up, well, what do? Their programming, which is to kill mutants, is over. They become useless. So the twist is, the idea is they're trying to save all the mutants just to go and kill them all again. It's like this kind of vicious cycle. So what's going to happen? You know, they help all these mutants to survive and flourish, and then when I guess it gets to a certain point, yes, let's start killing them all and bring the numbers back down and then start again. It's a bit of a crazy concept, but it works. The great fun thing about this is, you know, we do see these X-Men as teenagers and they look like teenagers, and in this instance, unlike Wonder Woman, it works obviously because this X-Men team have been plucked from their kind of teenage years from the past and brought to their future, our present, and they should still look like teenagers, and that's what they do look like, and they work really great as a team. They've kind of all bonded, they know their stuff, they kind of the formations, all that, and it just makes this book so much fun to see. A team that is not necessarily always bickering or always concerned about doing the right thing, so to speak. And it just, like I say, it just really works, and I have so much fun with this book now, and I'm so glad that this has finally made it to my pull list. So I'll be getting this every other week because it's out bi-monthly. And I think if you're a fan of the X-Men and you like, you know, good, bright, colourful, kinetic action, then X-Men Blue is certainly the book for you. And that leads us to my pick of the week, and I think you'll all have worked this out by now if you've already seen my Wednesday's video, because you know what books I picked up, and it is of course AD After Death, Scott Snyder and Jeff Lemire's 3-book. I'd call it a mini-series, but these books are a hefty, thick read. But what I thought about this, how do I sum this book up in a kind of little sound bite, so to speak? And what I came to was that it was perfectly imperfect. And what I mean by that is, this book, as I was reading it, I mean, there's a lot of pages in it anyway, but this part, more so than the last two, is incredibly text heavy. It's much more like reading a kind of almost children's storybook with illustrations in it. There's page after page after page of these big texts, and I guess for some people this would put them off, but the story involved in this and how Scott Snyder has not necessarily explained it all, but he's really fleshing out what has come before and why we're here where we are, and he really goes into a lot of detail about the way the Earth came to where it is now, where the people within this kind of secluded community, they just don't die anymore, while the rest of the world has suffered from this big epidemic. And there's just so much of it, and while yes, it is text heavy in here, and there isn't so much of the Jeff Lemire art in here, as in the kind of comic book strictness of it, the balance still just about works, and that's why I say it's kind of perfectly imperfect. Again, this book shouldn't appeal to a great majority of people, and probably doesn't, because, like, as I said, on the one hand, very text heavy, on the other we've got Jeff Lemire's distinctly kind of I'd say doodly, rough, painted art style, which isn't that clean, crisp line you find from the DC and the Marvel superhero books. This certainly has a very independent feel to it, but still, for me, this was just a fantastic read. It was impossible for me to read in one evening, just for the pure volume of stuff in it to read. But it's one of those books that answers so many questions, but infuriatingly leaves you with that kind of, not so much open-ended story, because I don't think we'll see another volume of this book, but it kind of leaves you with, well, what is their decision going to be? We've seen this... let me get a picture of him. We've seen throughout the issues this this guy has been carrying a big package, running away from something, and we find out it's well, it's a body in a bag, but this body is alive, and it's a patient who has been part of this community but has this this disease that stunts their growth. It makes them age incredibly slowly, both mentally and physically, but at the same time it's caused a lot of kind of debilitating physical attributes to her body, and kind of her mental understanding of what's going around in the world to her. So you can imagine that this woman is in a great deal of pain and probably just wants to die, but can't, because she's within this community that has essentially cheated death, and they are living immortal lives almost. And we finally get the whole picture that this guy carrying this woman in this backpack is trying to make it back to the earth, which has apparently all died and been decimated from this disease, and hopefully they will now catch it and die themselves. But again, this book has, and this is a great testament to Scott Snyder's storytelling, is that they make it to this forager, this ship that's going to take them away from this secluded encampment. But just as they get there, we get this guy who tells us that this is an event within our escapee's life that he's been doing again and again and again, trying to get further and further away, but changes his mind, thinking, oh, maybe the rumours are true, there is nothing out there, where we might as well just turn back. And so, you know, decades and hundreds of years go on again, and then he tries again, but every time he gets to that point where the forager is, he makes it even less further out, and it gets to this point where he's trying to change his mind, and the to and froing, and the woman who's been in this bag, who has been silent throughout this series, thinking that she's in this kind of coma, suddenly shouts out, "No, we've got to go, you know, we're going, we've had enough of this," kind of thing. And oh, it's so frustrating that after this whole conversation, this doubting of kind of our main character, of whether there is anything out there beyond their encampment that is going to help them kind of, I guess, be at one finally, and stop living after all these hundreds of years. We don't find out. It's just kind of, it leaves us hanging, and I'm just like, no! It's a great device, yes, as infuriating as it is, and again, it's kind of like we, the reader, then have to make up, I guess, the ending of the story. Which way do we want it to go? Do we want them to get on that boat and sail off into the sunset? Do we want this cycle to repeat again and again? Or maybe the more malicious of us want these two characters to be killed by the big kind of robot gunships that are behind the kind of leader, I guess, of the encampment. There, you know, the possibilities there are interesting, and probably says a lot about the person who makes that decision after the book has been finished and read. But overall, this has been a fantastic series. I wonder if, well, I'm sure they'll pile them all into one big trade, which will be fantastic and will keep you fully entertained for a good few hours, because that's how long it'll take to read through all three. But this has been a surprise find for 2017. I don't know how many more people got on this book, but they should have, because it is a different. It's different to anything really that is on the bookshelves at the moment, and that is why, one of the reasons why this was my pick of the week. And that's it. They're my books for this week. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new here and you don't want to miss out on any more of my videos. Give the video a big thumbs up. And in the comment section down below, tell me if you agreed with my pick of the week, if you are indeed picking up AD After Death, and anything else you want to talk about. I'll respond as soon as I can. Thank you all for watching. Bye bye.